This program is brought to you by First National Bank of Putana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Good evening and a very warm welcome to a very significant First Issues episode. One that marks 500 episodes and an uninterrupted 10 years on air. Tonight marks a very momentous occasion for those involved in the production of this show as well as its fans. 500 episodes, a full 10 years of weekly programs brought to you by our hardworking team. In honor of this, we will be taking you on a walk down memory lane, reminding you of some of the more memorable topics and personalities we have presented to you over 500 episodes, and speaking to some of the faces you have associated with First Issues in years past.
Good evening, Botswana, and welcome to the very first exciting episode of First Issues. This business magazine program will form part of your weekly night television watching. My name is Nomalungelo Nsinamwa.
Since then, we have brought you thought leaders from across the spectrum, from past and sitting national leaders, the struggles and successes of the man on the street, renowned international speakers, leading cultural icons, masters of industry, dignitaries from a host of countries speaking on bilateral relations. It is impossible to cover the breadth of individuals and topics we have delved into in well over 500 episodes. This could not have been achieved without the support of the visionary leaders at First National Bank of Botswana, who saw value in a concept that many had shied away from, but has now become a household brand. My predecessor, Shadi Linswi, is here this evening, as is Bonola Moletsane, who was my co-presenter a few years ago, to help us in commemorating this very special occasion. And from your time with the show, what would you say is your biggest takeaway, whether personally or professionally? What did you really learn from your time with First Issues?
When I started, I really didn't know what to expect. I just went in there with an open mind and I was like, let's just see where the ship sails. So I really just went in there and I just gave it my all. And the most interesting comments that I get from people that have watched me on the show is, "Oh, and half the time I'm like, but ke Motswana." So I don't even know what that means. It's almost as if to insinuate, how do we spend most of our time using the business language, which is English, for Botswana in the Botswana capacity. People don't get to interact with us on that level. But as a person, I would say working in a team, working under pressure, sometimes getting to the scene and not finding the person you have to interview, being there, and having to still make the show work and having to still do things under pressure. I'd say that helped me to think on my feet a lot more. It helped me to understand that even no matter what space you're in, you have to focus on what you're doing. Because being at an airport junction and having people walking past you and pulling faces as they walk past while you're recording, it's quite a thing, but that's what makes it really nice to think back and just think, it was cool being on the show and just inspiring other people as they walk past.
Good evening and welcome to First Issues. I'm your host, Shadi Mudisi. This show is proudly brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana. Well, I can't discount the fact that you walk into a room and you introduce yourself, but already you find out a lot of the people already recognize you from TV, and now I still get that. And they're like, "No, you did a really great job." And I'm like, wow, that was many, many years ago, about 6 years ago now. And I cannot not say that it didn't help my career in PR and media.
Of those interviews, are there any that were more memorable that have stayed with you till this day?
I would say hearing the Choppy story firsthand, because it was just a brand that kind of it just grew, and it didn't seem so obvious to me how fast it was growing until I went to speak to one of the co-founders, Mr. Ram, and hearing the story of where he was when he started, how he dreamt about it and how he made it happen with his partner it was fascinating. You know, with a little bit of patience and determination, you can absolutely achieve anything and everything. It doesn't matter whether you're at home or if you're in a foreign country, and I guess this choppy story is what stood out the most for me.
I think for me, some of the interviews that really stood out was those small interviews, you know, the young entrepreneur, the one who just got the youth development grant or fund. And you look at them now, 10 years later, and they're forever grateful for this platform. You know, they meet me and they're like, you know, you guys were the first people to put me on. And it's always so humbling to be part of somebody's journey, especially from that perspective. So for me, those are the interviews that really stuck out, because I don't want to mention them, but some have done really well in the industry. And I think from the interviews, I could tell that this person definitely knows what they're talking about. They're on the money and they are going to do fantastically well. I think what stands out the most is actually all the people. I think I did it for about 3 years, just over 3 years. And I can confidently say I remember each and every single person I interviewed. And sometimes they forget me and I'm like, hey, I interviewed you. So for me, that stands out, because, and no interview is ever the same, no week was ever the same. And the content creation was just off the charts, honestly.
I wasn't there for long, but in the short space that I was there, as Shadi said, it's difficult to forget people that you interview, because you're interacting with them kind of personally, and you interacting with them gets you understanding them from a certain level, which you otherwise would not have. Even access to certain offices, you know, getting to meet directors of certain companies, and even people who are starting out. It just gives you a whole mixture of understanding how people socialize and how they get about their business every day, which has helped me grow, like, significantly as a person.
And for your fans who sometimes do still ask us about you, can you tell us what you've gone on to do since?
Well, I went into the corporate space as a PR practitioner and marketing comms professional. So yeah, right now I find myself at Economic Media. And I must say, you know, my experience here at First Issues was definitely something that that has come in handy in my current job, especially the contacts, etc., especially because I'm in the TV space and content creation space. So that is what I'm up to now. And yeah, I remember one thing that actually sticks out, mind you, was that I remember I presented right up until 2 weeks before I gave birth. And yeah, it was intense. And you know, funnily enough, people couldn't really see at some point. And they used to say, but you've gained so much weight. I'm like, but I had a baby. I'm having a baby. So since then, I've had one other baby, and yeah, as you can see. So I still keep watching. My kids, I tell them that, you know, I used to be on the show, and they're like, really? Yeah. So it's great that you guys have a YouTube channel. So I show them, and now my youngest is like, Mommy, I want to be on TV. I want to be on TV too one day. So that's that. That's what I've been up to.
I've been in the travel and tourism industry. I've traveled quite a bit, exploring other territories. I've been doing events as well, and freelancing in the media space. So freelancing is everything from corporate modeling, doing certain corporate branding like print advertorials, radio voiceovers, and that sort of thing. So I can't really box myself and say I am this person. Yeah, because I'm one of those person who wears different hats as and when. But predominantly I am a freelance media practitioner.
What has been your favorite memory of this show? What type of content do you enjoy the most? Has it been our exploration of the tourism industry, both its challenges and potential? Do you prefer our food security and agriculture industry discussions? Do you like when we consider alternative sectors such as sport? Or is it our consumer and more social issues that speak to you the most?
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
EConsult Botswana, a leading provider in research, policy-related analysis and economic commentary in the Southern African region, in their last economic review, pointed to an improving economic climate as the year began. This based on a broad-based upturn in economic growth, an improvement in job creation, and some positive policy-related changes. Keith Jeffries, Managing Director at EConsult Botswana, gives us the highlights of their latest economic review for the first quarter of 2019.
Well, I think, as usual, it's a mixed picture. Some positive elements, particularly with regard to economic growth. So we have growth data now for the whole of 2018. So the fourth quarter data came out. And that showed that real GDP growth in 2018, the year as a whole, was 4.5%. And that was quite a big increase from the previous year, from 2017, when growth was only 2.9%. So now overall growth is back in line with expectations. So, and that's due to some quite strong performance in the mining sector, with Botswana increasing output and Botswana Ash increasing its output, but also mostly quite good performance across elements of the non-mining sectors of the economy. So quite good growth performance, as I say, a recovery from the previous year. And I think also several other aspects of macroeconomic performance have been quite good. So inflation has remained low. It's 3.3% at the end of the quarter. And that has enabled interest rates to be kept at historically low levels. So I think with regard to inflation and interest rates, that's all quite positive.
You said it was mixed. What are some of the less positive?
There are a few worrying things. So one is that the foreign exchange reserves declined quite substantially in 2018. And so what that means is that the balance of payments was in deficit. And we haven't yet seen the balance of payments, detailed balance of payments figures. They will only be released by Bank of Botswana probably in May. So we don't know where the deficit originated, but it does mean the balance of payments as a whole, as I say, was in deficit, which meant that there were more foreign currency outflows than inflows, hence a decline in the foreign exchange reserve. So that's a potential. It's not a worry in the short term, but it's a worry in the long term because obviously if we have balance of payments deficits for year after year, that's going to cause the foreign exchange reserves to decline further, and the foreign exchange reserves are quite a big, they're quite an important, what we would call a financial buffer, which enable us to absorb shocks. But obviously if they get too small, they'll no longer provide that role. And the other thing that's related and of some concern is that in the budget, so the budget came out in February, and in the budget figures for the year that's just finished and for the year that's about to start, revenue forecasts have been revised downwards. So and those are related because a lot of that's to do with what's happening in the diamond sector.
I thought the diamond sector was performing well. Why?
Yeah, okay, there's different elements to it. So it's doing well on the production front. So what GDP reflects is production levels, millions of carats of diamonds produced. And that was up in 2018, but that doesn't mean they're all going to be sold, and it doesn't mean they're all going to be sold at a good price. So what actually happened was that De Beers Group as a whole, and Debswana is the biggest provider of diamonds to De Beers Group, actually sales were down by value and by volume in 2018. So more diamonds were being produced, but fewer diamonds were being sold. So that's why you get a difference between what's happening on the GDP front, which measures physical output, and government revenues and the balance of payments, which measure the values. Then the other big issue is that, well, particularly looking to this year's diamond revenue forecast for government, as you know, Debswana has announced that Cut 9 is going to go ahead at Jwaneng. Which is good because it extends the life of the mine, so it's good from a long-term perspective. It means that Jwaneng will keep operating for well into the 2030s, but it's an expensive investment, and that investment has to be paid for up front, and because of the way Debswana operates is that investments are largely funded by revenues generated by the company, and of course if money is spent on capital investment, there's less money to distribute to government. So government's revenues from diamond mining will be affected while Cut 9 investment takes place. So the fiscal picture is, yeah, as I say, it's mixed. So there's deficits forecast for the year that's just finished and the year that's just starting.
How long can we expect the capital investment being made into Debswana and the Cut 9 project to affect government revenue?
Well, I think certainly the year that's just started, which is the 2019 to 2020 fiscal year, and the next year as well. But then there's the possibility of another big investment at Orapa as well, which is currently at the feasibility study stage. So this could go on for 3 or 4 years. As I say, it's important in the long term because it means that those mines will keep producing diamonds for longer, but the benefits are going to be felt sometime in the future and the costs are up front. So I think that government revenues will be affected by that. Now, that was to some extent anticipated. If you look at NDP 11, you can see that revenues were not expected to be particularly high. In fact, they were expected to be, relative to the size of the economy, relative to GDP, revenues were projected to be lower throughout most of NDP 11. But of course, that means that spending has to be held back if you don't want excessive budget deficits, and that's the political challenge.
So we can expect an extended season of belt tightening?
I wouldn't say belt tightening, but I think in Botswana what people have got used to is year after year increases in government spending. And I think that is what will change, that we won't see increases in spending every year. So I guess in relative terms, relative to what people have been used to, it might feel like belt tightening. Certainly it's going to be necessary to spend government resources better and achieve better outcomes with, maybe not with less money, but with the same money.
What other notable economic activity has taken place in these first 3 months of the year?
We've seen one positive development that hasn't maybe had as much attention as it deserves has been the go-ahead for a new copper mine, the Khoemacau mine, which is around the Toteng area, southwest of Maun. And this has been under development for some time, but they have succeeded in raising the money necessary to develop the mine, which is quite a lot of money. It's going to be around 4 billion pula investment, or 5 billion pula, and it's going to be a big mine. In terms of the level of, it's going to produce copper mainly, but also some silver. And when it reaches full capacity, it'll be producing more output or more output by volume and about the same output by value as BCL. So essentially, in macroeconomic terms, this mine will replace BCL. And I think that's a significant development which hasn't really had the recognition that it deserves. So that's very positive. And then there's another mine being considered not far away, also in the Khansi copper belt, which would also be a substantial copper mine. So I think that although we had the shock of BCL closure, it doesn't mean the copper industry in Botswana is dead. In fact, I think there's good prospects for big expansion of copper mining, but it tends to be copper associated with silver rather than copper associated with nickel.
Do join us in commemorating our 500th episode by sharing your memories and thoughts across our various social media platforms. Up next is a new face on First Issues, one you will be seeing more and more of as our 11th season continues. Do join me in welcoming Bonatego Ngwenya to the program as she presents our Own Your Day, Own Your Life productivity segment.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world. Because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to First Issues. As already introduced, I'm Bonatego Ngwenya. Thank you so much for joining us. We continue to have a long, hard look at the phenomenon that is stress in our continuing Own Your Day, Own Your Life productivity series with our resident, Professor Kiran Bhagat. Tonight, we ask a question that many of you have probably wondered. Could a quick pill be the answer to ridding yourself of the knotted muscles in your shoulders and persistent headaches that come with the stress of a high-pressure modern life? Although resident guest Professor Kiran Bhagat consistently and strongly advocates for the 4 pillars of stress management, that is amongst others, diet, exercise and sleep, when does it suffice to seek medical intervention?
Medication in terms of stress and depression and anxiety is required when you are not able to cope at work. When it gets to the situation where ordinary activities, going out of the house, becomes a trauma to you. There are some people that develop what are called agoraphobia, which means you have a fear of meeting people, you have a fear of going out into open spaces. When it becomes a social impediment, your stress or your anxiety or your panic disorder becomes an issue, or your depression becomes an issue, where you're not able to function at work, it's time for you to go and see a therapist, and it's time for that therapist possibly to give you medication to control those things that are making you dysfunctional in society.
I'm Bonatego Ngwenya, and this has been Own Your Day, Own Your Life productivity segment. From me and the rest of the First Issues team, we'll see you next time.
This program was brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?